Hey everyone, now I'm about to continue with the part of my timeline that I've been sharing out through the playlist, the JodyVision. Now, the last time I did a video about my timeline would be, so I have another playlist on this channel. It's called My Pictures, My Life. So I call that the basic version of my timeline, right? But on the JodyVision, when I talk about going to visionary state or any supernatural part of my life, then this is the aspect of my timeline that I've experienced more of a magical part of my life. And so throughout the year 98, this is when the visionary state started kicking up again. And so I have to make a handful of videos to share about this particular year. Now, last time I did one in my basic timeline, it was the year that I turned 23. And for some people, the number 23 is the number of magic, and it makes a good number for that because 2 and 3 are kind of like a yin and yang number, for one thing. So I'd like to break down my understanding of numerology a little bit as we go here, to share why I think maybe this age and this year and this moment in my life was a good time for it, because I feel like life communicates to us in a way that we will personally relate to depending on how we use language and symbols, right? So as I'd mentioned, my first moment, I think my first day in Denver, I got here on the bus and was standing outside in front of the bus station. My first day in Denver, when somebody came up and talked to me a little bit about magic, and what he said was, living here in Denver, you will learn a lot about magic. And I kind of shrugged my shoulders, but once all this stuff started kicking up, and at some point it has gone by, I started to remember him more and more, and it's like, wow, he probably said that for a reason. It wasn't just utter chatter. It was like, if this was a movie, it was the foreshadowing of how I was going to get my ass kicked in a magical way, because that's kind of what this is. It is kind of like getting dragged through the mud, because it's really it was a very stressful occasion to work through and overcome, especially with the lack of help and guidance around me, right? So I think at this point, speaking of help and guidance, I had a good friend named Rosie who I ended up coming to Montana to live with, and I had met her in Denver actually in '96, and I think sometime before we were getting to this point in my timeline, she'd packed up. I actually helped her to pack up and move away, and they ended up moving to Montana. So by '98, I think they were in Montana already, and at the same time we weren't in touch for a few years, and at some point I was just really going, boy, I sure wish I had a way to get a hold of Rosie, right? So that's where I was kind of on my own again. My father's good friend Kelly had moved away as well to go to California, where there were some opportunities there for him to be in the music business as a producer and in the film business. I don't know what they call it, key grip. So he's a technical guy. Anyways, I just felt like I was just more on my own. I had a lot of friends that were closer to my age, and a lot of people I know, of course, I make friends with them if they're open-minded in the same way that I am, and think that there's some truth to real magic or psychic awareness and things like this going on. So you think that would be helpful to me, but even then, some of those friends weren't very helpful, right? So, so I think I'm at a stage in my life here where I'm about to share a time where I think I was really depressed too, because so if you've been paying attention to the rest of my story, I got involved with the Kung Fu master synchronicities, and I was really heartbroken. I just got to the stage where I was listening to my friends telling me how this guy is just taking advantage of that I'm too naive and friendly. Kind of like my dad said when he didn't want to let me move away. He said, you're too friendly and naive, and all these bad things are going to happen. And it's like one of those things where, my dad was right. I'm too friendly and naive. I just feel so helpless and vulnerable, and I just feel like nothing's working for me and stuff like that. And I was kind of going round and around about Master Tay and my dad, and then I started to think about Bill Lee, and I was a little frustrated with him because I've been thinking about contacting him, but I'm not sure if I like the direction his career was going in after the last couple of albums they did. Although they're pretty good albums, I still felt like Like if I ever considered joining their band, I don't know if I'm gonna like the material they're doing. So I don't know if that's such a bad thing, that like I had these visions about Bill Lee where we're supposed to get married and play in a band someday. Maybe that's not such a bad thing because I don't know if I'd really want to play all the stuff they've written since this point, right? So that's okay. Although even then, I'm gonna say Bill Lee has had one of the best careers in this field of work, as far as like electronic industrial. Just to point out, I'm not bashing. I actually really appreciate it. Anyways, we're gonna talk a little bit more about what led up to me contacting Bill Lee and going to his concert. And so I had this good friend named Jason from Shaolin class. Now I was already hanging out with Scott Jones. Me and him got along really great, and he oftentimes trained with me and sparred with me and really helped make me better at kung fu. And then there was Jason, was also second black, and he seemed pretty into his kung fu. And then I also got introduced to another guy named Chris who was going to kung fu and got his black belt there. And he and I used to hang out and talk about stuff too. So he's gonna, I think this is when we started all hanging out there, and so I knew Chris as well over the next few years. So like 98 was a significant year. It seems like around the time I turned 23, I was going into this really bad funk, and then I started having more visions. So anyways, part of the reason I moved to Denver was a thing called TOPY, Temple of Psychic Youth, and Genesis Peorage of a band called Psychic TV was supposed to be kind of behind this thing, but they kind of got separated and went their own separate ways. But it all really started with Genesis of Psychic TV. And if you think of what he's talking about, he's a psychedelic person, he's an artist, he's a musician, a singer, a philosopher, a transgender person, but he's somebody that wants to break boundaries. He's not really supposed to be a bad guy, but somebody that's just really trying to break those unnecessary boundaries in society. And I can't think of him as a really good artist teacher. So anyways, this is sort of the connection with him. And I think his style of magic, they talk about the number 23 quite a bit. So that's always been a special number to me. So that's why I think it's significant, because that's how I look at it. And in fact, if you look at like Taoism and stuff, I think you see that number 2 and 3 side by side. I forget what they call it when you throw euros or something, or you get these 3 coins and you throw them, and it's going to be either a 2 or a 3 when they land. So those are significant numbers. And just to stop a moment and talk about numerology, like 1, I'm going to share my interpretation. 1 is you. 2 pertains to the physical, and 3 pertains to the spiritual. Now when we talk about 4, it's kind of like your house. It's the housing. It's the, your everyday needs. It's sort of the housing, the physicality of the world, and 5 is the number of man. So to mankind. And then the 6 is more like the spiritual domain. Like that's actually not like people think of 666 as a number for the devil. Well, 6 is a number for angels, and probably just to pertain to that next step of soul reality. And then 7 pertains to heaven, which is like the ethereal world, and so that's like one way of looking at it. Of course, there could be multiple meanings, but those are like kind of like your basics 1 through 4 here. How I look at it, like 5, 6, and 7 seem to be higher numbers, and then the highest numbers are 8 and 9. And I feel like 8 is kind of a relative of like 2 and 4, being physical numbers. So 8 is a good number for like the arts, like kung fu, music, or anything you do. Like me sitting here right now and telling stories, maybe if I can package my stories and make them, an art form, so the even the art of fiction. So any kind of art where we're taking things to the higher level, not just to meet our basic needs. We're taking things to a higher level because it also meets a lot of our spiritual needs as well. So that's why I kind of like having this little blanket that Rosie left behind, because I felt like she was a very magical person, and the type of artist I hope to be is one that takes things to a higher level and able to distribute proper magic through the work that you do as an artist. And the number 9 is the number of higher spirituality. So that's when that's just really the kind of the highest level, perhaps, when you're just kind of getting, and then once you graduate from that, then maybe it's a new cycle, and you keep climbing, like this picture, right? You're going to keep climbing, and your path of mastery or your personal ascension should continue. So it's kind of fun looking at what those numbers could mean and how they could apply, or like the number 0, of course. This could be the circle of heaven, or side by side with 1 is fullness and emptiness, a yin and yang relationship as well. So I'm turning 23 this year in 98. And for the next 3 years seem to be kind of a heavy spell of going into visionary state. And so 9 and 8 side by side look pretty interesting, because I remember like when I first met Billy in the visionary state, I was 6 years old. It was 1982, I'm not sure if that means anything, but just the fact that Billy kept telling me that his age was 8 going on 9, so he was 8 going on 9. I wouldn't be surprised if 8's his favorite number, but when I met Bill Lieb, it was like he was 8 years old. And that's a good number for music, and I think that that Bill Lieb has taken his music to a higher level. Like, it's not just basic music that artists like him and Kevin Key and an assortment of others that have been part of this particular genre of music, I feel like they've all taken it, like, it's not just noise music, or it's not just regular music, it's dragon music, and dragons are highly intellectual and magical beings. So I like to say that Bill Lieb is a dragon breath because he sings like a dragon. But there is a lot of dragon magic, and and in martial arts we want dragon spirit as well. That is our fighting spirit. So it seems like this kind of music, I love to do my shadow boxing and stuff, and play with it because it has such great dragon spirit. But so all this is coming together in 98. And then 99 is, oh man, that's like a master number, 2 9s side by side like that. And then everyone was scared of big old 2000, like, Y2K. That was one of the people who thought it was silly to worry about flipping a page on the calendar, right? And I ended up having a pretty weird experience surrounding that flip of the calendar myself after laughing about it. So I really kind of put my foot in my mouth, I guess, because then I had a super weird transition into 2000, right? And so anyways, I started hanging out with Jason a lot. I think I was not working, and I needed to sell my my VW Bug, and I couldn't sell it very easily because it wasn't a proper edition. I don't know what it was. I took it around to some car dealerships, and they just acted like I can't sell that, and so that's how I can kind of put it on my timeline. So doing these videos is kind of fun to dust off my memory and kind of put things in order, because I kind of think this happened, and then I talked to Rosie in another vision, and then I went to see Frontline Assembly, and then I had another vision when I went to Key West to see my dad. So I got to tell about all these times. And so I was hanging out with Jason a lot because I lived on the corner of 14th Avenue in Pennsylvania, in the Acacia building, and he lived right around the corner. You kind of go up Logan towards Colfax, and there was the Art and Action building there, so he was renting a studio there and kind of living there part-time. And I was starving. I just quit working, and I was starving, and one day he fed me a really nice hummus sandwich on wheat bread, and it was so delicious. I kept going over there to get another one and just hang out and talk. And one day I remember he kind of scolded me and said, "Jody, all you ever do is talk about your dad, Bill Lieb, and Master Tay. You really need to settle down." And so apparently I'd shared a lot of my personal business with him. And one day I went over to Jason's house, his studio, and I must have went into visionary state because he really explained a lot of things to me that I know he would, we had a conversation that I know didn't really happen. And he started out telling me about a parallel dimensional timeline, and the way that you could get to it is by being in a visionary state. And then he said that sometimes the prophecy is false and sometimes the prophecy is true. And I'm like, well, what prophecy? Are you talking about Nostradamus? He goes, "No, Jody, this is a prophecy." So he was telling me that I'm having a prophecy at the moment, and in that prophecy was laying it down, like, you're in a parallel dimensional timeline that you get through by a form of visionary state. He was telling me point blank where I am and what's happening, and I didn't have the ears to hear it at the time. And then he went on to talk about, he said something about Master Tay, thinks that And if you really want to be a kung fu master, you shouldn't smoke pot or some stupid shit, right? So I wasn't really listening at that point. And then, but then he started talking about Bill Lieb. Now, Jason told me that he has connects with the music scene. So I had been over to Jason's dad's house, and I did see the music studio over there. So he was telling me that sometimes his dad records people who do industrial music. And so he seemed to know a thing or two about a thing or two. And he was telling me that he knew some things about Bill Lieb, and I didn't really like what he was saying. So I don't really know a lot about. At least I didn't know a lot about Bill Lieb at the time, and I just figured, he's probably somebody like my dad's friend. So when Jason started telling me these things that sound like rumors, I was just like, no, he don't, no, he doesn't, no, he don't, no, he doesn't. I just think Bill Lieb wouldn't do none of these things. So before I tell them, I want you to know that these things are probably not necessarily true, and I tried to defend him the whole way. But yeah, Jason started telling me stuff like Bill Lieb is bisexual. He's a sugar daddy, and he goes down to Cheeseman Park to pick up young boys, and so that's something that does go on in Denver. That's where the homosexual people find partners sometimes, in this type of activity. And I've met a couple of guys where they've talked about their relationships with older men that you'd call them a sugar daddy because they're older, they've got money, and they just take care of you for your companionship, so you can live rent free and go to college and all that good stuff, That's what you do. And sometimes women do that with guys too. So sometimes a sugar daddy is also for women, for a young girl. So that's trying to get through college without paying rent and doesn't mind a little sex in exchange for the financial support. And especially helps if you like each other, right? Hopefully you wouldn't. So it's kind of like a temporary romance that isn't fixed. You can float off once you find the right mate, and a lot of times these people go straight now and get married, have kids, and live like a yuppie. Anyways, just explaining that's the nature of Cheeseman Park, and saying that's where Bill Lieb hangs out and finds his sex partners, okay? Not necessarily true, but that's what Jason said in the vision, and that Bill Lieb wears a toupee or a hairpiece because he's going bald, and that he likes to sniff cocaine, and I'm like, no, he's not, no, he don't, he wouldn't do that, and then he started telling me that Bill Lieb lives upstairs in my building, and that he might eventually end up owning my apartment or something like this. So he planted some seeds of thought right there. And what did he say about Bill Lieb in my building? Maybe I would eventually see him, but yeah, he kind of got me paranoid, like at some point it caught up with me. I'm like, oh. So man, I'm trying to remember everything he told me before we hang it up here. But those are definitely some key points that it seemed like he knew a thing or two about Bill. Oh, I know what it was. He opened up to this page in the phone book and said this person, Tony Van Buren, is a relative of Bill Lieb's, and if I call this number right now, I'll be able to get him on the phone. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to call it, but that's the seed he planted. So he was saying Bill Lieb lives upstairs, and his brother's last name is Van Buren. And so anyways, the building he was hanging out was called the Art and Action Building, and at some point I got a history on that building. This was actually where the guys from Temple of Psychic Youth were hanging out, the Genesis Peorge people. I think that the basement studio my friend Scott Jones was renting for a while was used as their hangout. Like they had a little record shop and stuff like that, and even Chris and Cozy had been by there and stuff. So in ways I kind of wonder if they've left behind their energy, left behind a little bit of their magic, because I was hanging out in that building, and then I got that history. So I thought it was kind of fun to find out. You would go out my apartment's back door, go straight down the alley, and then their back door was that downstairs studio where my friend was staying for a while. And so now I was talking about in a previous video, I feel like I've learned a little bit about the application of psychic awareness or understanding of magic through martial arts, which so Jason and I had met through Shaolin actually, and then the music that I feel connected to, like the industrial music and all that stuff, I feel like it has a similar aspect where you know, it's not just regular music. You're applying your psychic awareness and understanding of magic as you produce music. So so that's kind of the parallel. It really seems like this is an understanding or a gift that you can use in any case to improve upon yourself, you know, as long as you're on a path of mastery, right? That's always the bottom line. And that's gonna, as you unfold in your path of mastery, you should experience these type of gifts and assets, right? So anyways, the year I turned 23, the visionary state stuff started picking up a lot more. It did seem to be where it was a magical year, but I did feel like it was also a time of struggle for me, like barely being employed, and for maybe the next 3 years going through the visionary state, struggling to stay employed, and just really being on the edge, you know. So I want to come back and share a number of videos about how my life was going through 98, and so this is going to be, I kind of think, some of the juicy stuff over the next few years, especially 99 into 2000, that I think is super interesting. So have a great day and take care, and I shall talk to you soon.